Welcome to The Explainer. So, have you ever read a news alert or maybe a social media post and felt just subtly manipulated? Well, today we're exploring a truly fascinating concept, the idea that language actually holds unseen power. The words we read and hear every single day are actively shaping our daily reality. We're going to unpack one of the most influential frameworks in linguistics and media studies, Fairclough's three-dimensional model. Whether you're studying communication, sociology, or, just want to better understand the media you consume, this framework is going to completely change the way you read.
Now, to understand why this model is such a game changer, we first need to think about traditional linguistics. Usually, when we study language in school, we're taught to look at grammar and vocabulary in a bit of a vacuum, right? We look at a text and ask these basic functional questions, like, how is the sentence structured? We look for the noun, the verb, the subject. We basically treat language as if it's just this innocent tool for passing along information.
Okay, let's dive into this, because critical discourse analysis, or CDA, forces us to abruptly shift our perspective. Instead of just looking at grammar, the core question becomes, who actually has power in this text? We also have to ask ourselves, whose voice is being heard? Whose voice is being ignored entirely? And what underlying ideology is being subtly promoted to the reader? So let's formally define what we're talking about here. Critical discourse analysis is an approach that studies exactly how language is used to create, maintain, or even challenge power, ideology, and inequality in our society. The absolute crucial premise you need to remember is this: language is never neutral. It doesn't just passively reflect our social reality, it's actively building and shaping it. Here's our roadmap for the explainer today. First, language is not neutral. Second, the three-dimensional model. Third, unpacking the three dimensions. Fourth, applying the model step by step. And fifth, common analytical mistakes. Starting with Section 1, language is not neutral. Every single word we read or hear is a deliberate choice that constructs the world around us. Moving to Section 2, the three-dimensional model, created by the brilliant British linguist Norman Fairclough. And this brilliantly illustrates his concept, the three-dimensional model. Fairclough proposed that every text should be examined through a progression of three interconnected levels. We start right at the center with the text, move out to the discursive practice, and finally reach the social practice. We logically zoom out from micro-level grammar to macro-level society. Which brings us to Section 3, unpacking the three dimensions. Let's journey through these individually and see exactly what evidence we're hunting for at each stage. Starting right at the center with Dimension 1, the text level. This is the descriptive phase. Think of this as putting the raw linguistics under a microscope. We're looking exclusively at the text itself. Which specific words are selected, which words are repeated. We look at grammar, transitivity, pronouns, metaphors, and modal verbs. Basically, we want to know exactly who is presented as the agent of the action. Let's look at how perfectly this demonstrates the power of textual choices. Take a look at Side A. The police arrested the suspect. If we ask who performs the action, well, the answer is clear: the police. Now look at Side B. The suspect was arrested. Who arrested him? The sentence literally doesn't say. Side B uses the passive voice to completely remove the actor. This isn't just some boring grammar lesson. That objective linguistic choice instantly shifts how responsibility and agency are perceived by the reader. Okay, once we have our textual evidence, we zoom out to Dimension 2, discursive practice. This is the interpretation phase. Here, we step away from just the grammar and examine the broader communication context. We have to ask things like, how is this text produced, distributed, and interpreted? Who wrote it? Who's the intended audience? Where was it published? This level also introduces intertextuality, meaning we look at how this text draws on, quotes, or references other texts, like, say, a newspaper quoting a government press release. Finally, we zoom all the way out to Dimension 3, social practice. This is the explanation phase, where we ask the biggest macro-level questions. How does this discourse relate to society and power? What larger ideologies does this text support? Which social values are being promoted here? Who actually benefits from these representations? And ultimately, does this text reinforce existing social inequality, or does it challenge it?
Let's see how this builds a complete picture using a real-world example. Imagine the headline that reads, "Illegal immigrants flood the country." In partially breaking this down, at the textual dimension, the word flood is a deliberate linguistic metaphor. Moving to the discursive dimension, we look at the context. This headline appears in a newspaper specifically addressing public concerns about immigration. Finally, at the social dimension, we analyze the impact. Comparing people to a flood portrays them as a dangerous natural threat, which can directly influence public attitudes and potentially support more restrictive policies. A simple textual metaphor ripples outward to impact societal structures.
Section 4. Applying the model step by step. So, the crucial point is seeing how this actually works in real time, so let's apply the framework to two distinct everyday examples. Let's put this quote under the microscope. Women should remain at home to care for children. Step 1. The text. The sentence uses the modal verb should, which expresses an obligation rather than just describing a fact, and assigns women the agency of care. Step 2. Discursive practice. Who might say this? Perhaps a cultural commentator or influencer, aiming to promote a specific view to families or the general public. Step 3. Social practice. What ideology is represented here? This statement socially reinforces traditional gender expectations. It may influence attitudes about employment and marginalize alternative family arrangements. Let's look at another one, a very famous cosmetics ad slogan, "Because you're worth it." At the text dimension, we see positive evaluative language and the direct address of the pronoun you, which acts as an implied complement. At the discursive practice dimension, this is produced by a corporation targeting everyday consumers with the express purpose of encouraging a purchase. And at the social practice dimension, we see how this simple slogan reinforces a cultural ideology. It subtly links your personal self-worth and value to physical appearance and commercial consumption. And the real beauty of Fairclough's model is that it isn't just for ads or headlines. You can apply it to newspaper articles, political speeches, court judgments, advertisements, films, television shows, your daily social media posts, textbooks, interviews, government policies, the whole shebang. The analytical questions we just practiced remain exactly the same. Only the linguistic evidence changes based on the text. It's an absolutely universal tool. Which brings us to Section 5, Common Analytical Mistakes. Before you rush off to analyze your entire social media feed, let's cover a few traps to avoid. Proper critical discourse analysis requires some real discipline. The most common trap, simply summarizing what a text says instead of actually analyzing the language. You cannot ignore the linguistic evidence. Another trap is jumping straight from a single word to a massive societal ideology without proving the connection through the discursive practice. And finally, never confuse your own personal opinion with structural analysis. Good CDA is a strict methodical movement from textual evidence to interpretation to broader social explanation. To sum up our explainer today, Fairclough's three-dimensional model is incredibly powerful because it links language, communication, and society into one cohesive structure. You start with the text to see how language is used, move to discursive practice to see how it's created and understood, and end at social practice to uncover the broader societal effects. It proves that seemingly ordinary, everyday texts are actively participating in shaping our social realities. Which leaves us with this final thought. Language is the invisible architecture of our world. Now that you have this toolkit, I challenge you. What power dynamics are hiding in the very next text you read? Apply this analytical lens to your own life, and I promise you're never going to look at a simple sentence the same way again. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning everything you read.